So what you're looking at is just another Hell Pacifist Sorceress Bale kill, and wait a minute. I feel like we've been here before. Well, technically speaking, we have. Back on August 16th of 2022, I became the first person to ever beat Hell Pacifist Run ever, and I'll explain to you what that means, but this one's a little bit different. That one took us over a month of streams and 50 hours of total gameplay. You can't have a timer running that entire time, so I couldn't submit it as an official speedrun, but it was a really cool challenge run, a great proof of concept, and we showed that it is physically possible. Now, the thing that always bugged me about it was the fact that if it was possible, that means that theoretically you could do it in a speedrun. And we finally got an opportunity to put that to the test. So without further ado, here's the story of how over a 34-hour period, we became the first and potentially only person ever and claimed the #1 spot on the leaderboards. This is a big thing. Not only are we going to try to do something that just might be impossible, but this is big. It's our first ever 24-hour stream, and here we go. So here's to 24 hours starting now, 8:02 a.m. and I guess I'll see you all on Sunday at 8:02 a.m. The Pacifist run is pretty simple, and I'll just go ahead and throw up the speedrun.com rules so you can read them if you want. Feel free to pause the timer. But what it basically boils down to is you can never choose to willingly attack a monster. You can't use mercenaries, you can't use summons, you can't use poison potions, you can't use fire shrines, you can't do anything. You can't lay traps. You can't force monsters to attack you using attract or confuse. The monster needs to choose to willingly hit you, and then something needs to deal damage back to them. There are 4 major ways that we're going to do that damage. We have attacker takes damage. We have Thorn's Aura, which returns percentage damage based off the damage that we take. We're going to use Shiver Armor, Chilling Armor, and then Chance to Cast when struck and Chance to Cast on death. Now that last one only comes in the form of facets, and they're incredibly rare, and I'll just go ahead and spoil it right now. We never find one, although it would make this run infinitely easier. And it goes even more hardcore than that. You can't accidentally attack a monster. You can't accidentally swing at a monster. If you use telekinesis to go into a town portal, you can't accidentally click a monster. Any of those things causes the entire run to need to be abandoned and restarted if you're really interested in trying to do that. If I'm being completely honest with you all, I had no intention of actually finishing this run. We were doing a 24-hour stream because we had hit a sub incentive on my channel that I'd completely forgotten about, and I figured, why not? We'll give it a shot, we'll get as far as we can, it'll be a great time. And just as a little bit of foreshadowing, it turns out we dropped a very specific item that we would need to actually make this happen. And all of a sudden, it looked like not only were we going to do our first ever 24-hour stream, but we were going to get a 24-hour world record that no one would be able to beat. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk a little bit more about what we're actually doing at this point, because there's a lot of weird stuff that you probably never see in any other Diablo runs, or maybe even in other speedruns altogether, but I'll try to break it down and make it easy. The holy grail of this run can drop as early as this super chest that you see right here in the Bloodmoor. That little house there with the chest on the inside, it'll drop a ton of items, typically magic as well as gems, jewels, and charms, etc. And that means that it's our best chances of dropping a chipped skull. Now, why would we care so much about a chipped skull? Well, it just so happens to say attacker takes 4 damage when you put it into a shield. That means if you can get 2 of these into a 2-socketed shield starting around level 3, you could be doing 8 attacker takes damage. And honestly, that's enough to get you through most of normal difficulty. So we are going to sit here and open up this chest, getting rings, amulets, and a lot of chipped gems, hoping to get that skull. Oh, we also keep all the rings and the amulets because we're actually going to be using an interesting Herodra cube recipe later on, where you cube 3 of them together for chances at getting really important stats like all resistance and chance to cast Hydra when struck. Basically, every run was the same. I would check for an XP shrine, because we actually had multiple shrines near this waypoint. We would go pop the chest, and then if we had that XP shrine, we would wait around for monsters to hit us, accumulating gold and just using attacker takes damage on our armor and our belt. Shiver Armor is how we're going to kill monsters in melee, and that doesn't unlock until level 12. Chilling Armor is how we kill ranged monsters, and that doesn't unlock until level 24. So these chipped skulls are our only bet. you gotta be patient if you're willing to do the Pacifist run. And it turns out we were going to have to be very patient. During this early farming portion of the run, we also want to pick up a Wand of Weaken. Weaken charges are going to allow us to reduce incoming physical damage by 33% as long as that curse is applied to the target, and this is going to work on every monster, including boss monsters that are actually hitting us in melee range. Before we have access to Thorns damage, where we don't necessarily want to reduce incoming damage, this is one of our only ways to help stay alive, so we actually end up picking up 2 of these wands very early on. And here we finally did it. We got ourselves a chip skull. Now we can finally add that 4 additional damage to our kit and start absolutely wrecking demons in Sanctuary. But if you look at the timer in the bottom left, this has taken us 51 minutes. That's 51 minutes in the real world, and we haven't even left the cold plains yet. By this point, we've managed to reach level 7 and we're on our way, so we need to start moving forward. Get into Stony Field, preferably get into Tristram so we get a chance of getting a magic ring. It just so happens that we hit a weird bug here when we were fighting Treehead. I level up and I don't get full healed. We're trying to figure out how this works, but I figured I'd include it just because it was kind of interesting. There's also a chance that we might want to run the cows later on. There's actually another weird bug where the Cow King can't drop the Cow King set. This is something that we learned much to our detriment in our first attempt, because I farmed him for 10 hours trying to get the Cow King set. If you don't know, it has a chance to cast Static Windstruck, which would drastically increase our kill speed, but again, there's no real easy way of getting it, so farming cows would just be for bases or runes. After this though, there aren't too many important things, so we're going to kind of very quickly get through it. It's just time to use our attacker takes damage and shiver armor to clear our way through normal. Next up is Nightmare Countess, where we need to go farm some really important runes, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. So we very quickly clear through normal Indariel, normal Duriel, and normal Mephisto. Normal Hellforge gave us an F rune. This was actually foreshadowing for all of our Hellforges moving forward. They were all crap, so don't expect to see another clip in this video. Now this guy right here, Lord Desace, is the actual bane of this run, and I won't get into it too much right now because we're going to be covering it a ton in the Hell section. But what you need to know is that he is public enemy number 1, and it is very satisfying to be able to easily kill him, even starting this early in normal. Whenever he shoots you, you just put on your chilling armor and you're going to shoot back ice bolts, and easy peasy, he's dead. Ignore the fact that in Hell he's completely immune to cold damage. We'll deal with that later. And just like everybody else, we kill normal Diablo. Normal Diablo is oddly enough one of the more difficult act bosses throughout the entire run, like including Nightmare and Hell. At this point, his lightning hose can actually hit you, so we use this little bit of cheese strat, putting him up against a corner to make it easier. Come Hell difficulty, we're going to desperately miss how easy it is to handle the Ancients in normal, but we basically use the exact same things that we did on Lord Desace and the previous act bosses. Throw on Shiver Armor to be able to kill Talik and Korlik, and then use Chilling Armor to kill Madoc. Split them up around the little corner so that you only have to fight them one at a time, and again, super easy, and these guys go down smooth. In normal, the throne room's super easy to get through, especially using wave skip technology if we really want to, and we're onto Bale. Bale is also a complete pushover. Just make sure to go despawn his clone whenever he summons one and sit there until he's finished killing himself on your Thorns damage and your Shiver Armor. We actually got super lucky and Bale dropped us a soul rune, which is something that we would need to make the new rune word Bulwark. Sadly, I completely forgot about that, so I immediately took that soul rune and I went and built a lore. It's not a terrible rune word, and we do use it throughout the run, but using this one soul rune ended up costing me a ton of time later on. But there you go, 7 hours in and normal difficulty is done. Just do that 2 more times and we got this run in the bag, right? Right? On our very first Countess run, we actually dropped the Amrune that we would need to make our Edge Bow to give us Thorns Aura. Not only that, we also dropped an Io rune, and we're gonna need that to be able to build that Bulwark we were just talking about. It also just so happens to be her rarest rune, and here are the statistics on how likely it was for her to drop one. With these 2 runes in hand, we actually go back to normal to finish up the rest of our quests, our stat quests, and level up a little bit. Now that we had that Thorns Aura, we could more easily farm. After that, we keep running Nightmare Countess until we have the majority of the runes that we would need. We're still missing a soul rune, but it'll probably take us a while to be able to find the base that we want. Or at least I thought so. So we go and we kill Nightmare and Dariel, not a problem there. We get up to level 36 so that we can shop for a Wand of Low Resistance. It's going to make it much easier to be able to reduce monsters' resistances, and it stacks with our Cold Mastery to increase the amount of cold damage that we're doing with our armors. Nightmare Dariel goes down without a fight, and he actually drops us a Dwarf Star, which is a massive, massive amount of survivability for us. And here's where things start to get a bit more wild. Oh, what was that? 4-socket broadsword from me? Perfect. The Spirit Runeword sword is super important for us, and that needs a 4-socket base. Typically, you need to use a socket quest on a sword that you get from normal cows to definitely have one in any speedrun. We just drop one while farming Act 3 Nightmare Flare Jungle for XP. No biggie. What is this damage? Alright. Okay. So the plan right now is to farm Flare Jungle in Nightmare Act 3 to be able to get a lot of experience easily. The Flares are going to proc Nova Gear a whole bunch. They also proc our different damage shields very easily. But I noticed at one point that our kill speed was much slower than I was expecting it to be. So I decided to throw on even more Nova Gear and try to up our DPS. And it turns out that was a mistake. I accidentally dropped a lot of key stats like mana per kill, which was really important for keeping up our energy shield, a bunch of resistances, and even plus to skills when I took off the lore helmet, so it actually made it much harder to survive. After fixing our gear and getting our survivability back, we were back on track for getting XP, and our farming was going swimmingly. We dropped arguably the best amulet for our survivability hands down, and that's a Nokazin's amulet. This is going to give a massive amount of fire resistance as well as actually increase our maximum fire res. This is definitely the most important resistance in a D2R speedrun to prioritize. Slot, yes. Please be 3 sockets. Please game. Oh, and then we just so happened to drop the 3-socket helmet that we need to make Bulwark. Now we had to go back to Nightmare Countess and Farmer for a long time, and what felt like after an eternity, we were on to Nightmare Mephisto. Oh, hello Nightmare Mephisto, and goodbye Nightmare Mephisto. Nightmare Chaos Sanctuary still isn't a problem because Lord Desace isn't immune to cold yet. And with our Thorns Aura, our boss kill speed is much faster than it was in normal. So we say hello and then goodbye to Diablo in turn, and now it's on to Act 5. This is when we get to the great XP farming. Nightmare Act 5 Worldstone Keep is area level 66, and we're looking for soul killers, the little flare guys like you find in Act 3. They have no natural resistances, and at this point they quickly proc our armor. We can use them to shoot through melee monsters as well when needed. Even at level 56, we're still only getting 5% of their total XP value due to the XP penalty, and our XP bar is still going absolutely through the roof. As we get closer to level 66, we get more and more XP from them, and we'll farm these guys all the way up to level 60, which is what you need to be able to finish the Ancient's quest in Hell difficulty and move on to killing Hell Bale. Now everything in the run seems to be going fine, but we do have one little problem. And I alluded to it earlier, but that's being able to kill Oblivion Knights, and more specifically Lord Desace in Hell difficulty. Here's the problem. He is always immune to cold. There's no way to break it, there's no way for us to get Sunder Charms without beating Hell difficulty, so we need to kill him with some other element. He also doesn't proc Chance to Cast while struck, or Thorns damage. So how do you kill a monster that is immune to all of your damage types and literally doesn't interact with Thorns damage? Well, there are 2 items in this game that could answer that question for us. The first is Inferno Stride, and the second one would be the Pull Rune. We would need to make the rune word Enlightenment. Both of these have a chance to cast Blaze when struck. So if some other monster hits us, or if we were to proc it in one of the fire pits down in the River of Flames, we could make a massive pool of blaze fire behind Lord Desace and then push him into it. Oblivion Knights don't like when you get too close to them. They've been observing social distancing since 1999, but this is the one way I've found to be able to actually kill Oblivion Knights in Hell difficulty. Now, it just so happens that I was about to save an exit while farming in Nightmare Worldstone Keep. There weren't a lot of flares around, and these demon sprite monsters don't really hit you too well, but then this happened. Which, like, if this dude could shoot at me, that'd be pretty radical. Holy shit, it dropped a Pull Rune! Holy shit, I might actually be able to do this. I might legitimately be able to do this run. Oh, by the way, I went and looked it up. That drop had a 1 in 180,960 chance of dropping. Thanks, RNGesus. Now that we legitimately had a way of actually finishing this run, it seemed pretty simple to me. Let's finish getting our levels, make the rune word enlightenment, which is really nice. On top of the blaze proc, it also gives you a +2 to sorc skills, a big boost to our energy shield because it also gives us additional points to our warmth, and it increases the damage of all of our armors. Not only that, it also increases our cold mastery efficiency, so all in all, it's a huge get. Remember when I said we were going to re-roll those rings and amulets? Well, we did once we hit level 54. Nothing came out of it, but you know, at least our stash is a lot cleaner. But with our levels and our answer to Decease in hand, we moved forward thinking that this run was basically in the bag. So as of Nightmare, the Bale waves are starting to get pretty sketchy to fight, so we're using a technique called wave skipping, where you actually force Bale's waves to not spawn and you never have to fight any of the monsters in them. We almost messed up twice, but luckily we're able to skip every single wave without needing to fight them at all. Imagine fighting Bale waves with very little gear and being unable to actively fight any of the monsters yourself. You would want to skip these two. Sadly, we used up most of our luck here. What was that, Mac? A little bit of foreshadowing for the hell portion, maybe? Not a lot to say about Nightmare Bale. You pretty much just lower res and stand there with Thorn's auras until he kills himself dead. Under 15 hours and Nightmare is already in the bag. We have a date in the Hell Chaos Sanctuary, in what I used to think was the true final boss. Turns out though, we were going to find a bug that was going to make this run almost impossible, and there was a new challenger for the title of true final boss. On Hell and Dariel, we figured out something very interesting. Blaze is strong. I mean really strong. Now, Indariel takes extra fire damage, but we haven't synergized the skill at all. This is going to be important later on. Blaze again proves to be super strong on Duriel as well. He's so large that he runs over multiple fire pyres whenever we drag him across the arena. This is a huge improvement over the slow and steady armor plus thorns damage, since we need energy shield to be able to survive more than 2 hits before going back to town. Hell Mephisto didn't want to play our little Blaze games, and surprisingly, he's the most dangerous Hell boss. He has many attacks that aren't melee skills, his Poison Cloud makes it hard to regen with potions, and his spells hit for a ton. While not the longest fight, he's definitely the most frustrating. We're 17 hours into this run, merely 2 hours after finishing Nightmare, and we're already at Hell Chaos Sanctuary. Since our first proof of concept run, I've thought a lot about this point. With our trusty enlightenment, I thought we had everything that we needed to make this work. This chaos was surprisingly much easier than I thought it would be, and simultaneously the most frustrating and disheartening experience of my speedrun career. And that's not hyperbole. We got our first Decease kill very early on. We just pushed him into a corner, we triggered Blaze in the River of Flame fire pit, and before running him into it, it just worked. Normally, we would have to worry about Bestow here. That's a secret spell that they cast that causes them to regenerate very aggressively, but apparently the Blaze damage was consistent enough and powerful enough to not really need to worry about that at all. There was this silly little Oblivion Knight with Might Aura that had been giving us a problem for this entire attempt. Plan was simple. Run Infector up into the Lord Decease arena, making sure he didn't run near any Oblivion Knights and get bestowed himself, and then kill him with armor and thorns. It should have been that simple, but a bug I had never seen before happened, and this would end up costing us 4 hours in this run, while I tried to troubleshoot in real time what the issue was. Infector was healing, and that's impossible. Any monster that you need to kill does not naturally regenerate. Go deal damage to any act boss and then wait a very long time. They will never start regenerating, but there's apparently some issue in the Chaos Sanctuary seal bosses specifically that if they are ever inactive for enough time, meaning you go back to town, you unload them, you get too far away from them for at least 8 seconds, they begin healing once they are dealt a single point of damage. And this is something that speedrunner Kano has also encountered and logged as a bug, but I just thought he had been bestowed. That one Oblivion Knight, maybe it was close enough, he wasn't far enough out of range, so I reset. And I did the whole song and dance again. Each one of these attempts takes roughly an hour to set up, moving the monsters out of the area, killing stragglers, proccing Blaze, which could take multiple minutes sometimes, since it only has a 5% chance to proc. But we got Decease dead, this time killing every Oblivion Knight within 4 screens and dragging Infector one more time. It looked like everything was going well, and he definitely wasn't regenerating. I needed potions and I needed to heal desperately, so I went back to town, and when I came back, it happened again. This is when I knew something else was afoot and I would need a different strategy. I realized that it must be some issue with unloading Infector. Going to town was removing his no regen flag or something similar. So that meant we couldn't go back to town. We would need to drag him, deal with his minions, and kill him without ever going back for heals or potions. So we prepped a mini arena, dropping tons of potions preemptively, and we just have to find a way to survive. Luckily, it worked. We took 2 deaths, but we loaded back in fast enough to not cause the bug, and we got Infector dead. It only took 14 real-life minutes fighting him. He had somehow become the secret final boss of our run, or at least I had thought so. It took nearly 4 hours of real time, but we finally killed El Diablo. And now it was on to the actual, true final boss of this run, the Ancients fight. A fight I realized far too late. I didn't know how we managed to kill them the first time around. I seriously thought we were gonna finish this run before the 24-hour mark, and I was sorely mistaken. I just didn't know it at the time. In fact, coming out of Hell Chaos Sanctuary, I felt invincible. Now just keep this in mind. We're 21 hours into this speedrun at this point. We had just managed to overcome a 4-hour-long bug fiasco, and I thought the rest of this was in the bag. I was trying to think of a way of paraphrasing what I said in this moment, but I'll just play the actual clip. It wasn't frustrating, it was easy. There is no world, there's no construction the human mind could conceive of where Diablo 2 was going to tell me I don't get to finish this run. It's just not a thing. The math doesn't add up. The stars don't align that way, Kimosabes. It's just not how it works. I'm not about to have this 23-year-old game attempt to deny me a single thing in this entire world. It was cute. I'll give it that. It was cute. The challenge of the Ancients in Hell is that they are always immune to at least one element, fire, lightning, and cold. Then on top of that, they can spawn with 2 affixes. These could be cursed, extra strong, they could have fanaticism or might aura. Not only that, they also spawn with equipped gear, which can drastically increase their damage, give them extra immunities, or give them really difficult stats to deal with, like life leech or poison damage. You can infinitely reset them, looking for good combinations of affixes, but we're running on a timer. We need to drop multiple inventories of potions on the ground, but they only last for 10 minutes. You can reset them by picking them up and re-dropping them, but try to pick up and drop 40 plus potions every 10 minutes while 3 Ancients chase you down and try to kill you while you can't fight back. It just doesn't work. It took me a while to create a plan, but we got there. I'd split the Ancients up, kill Talik by himself, then I would use Madoc to proc my chilling armor and proc our blaze from enlightenment. Then I would just run the boys back and forth through the blaze while casting lower res. No problem. Well, except one problem. I couldn't survive long enough. In our first ever run, I had Huanin's armor, and that triggers static wind struck. This can bring them all the way down to 50% life in hell, and basically means you're only fighting half of the Ancients, meaning it only takes half as long. This time, it wouldn't be so easy, and as the 24-hour mark hit, and my character lied dead on the floor, I needed to sleep, but I wasn't beaten. I'd leave the timer on, the recording running, and I'd come back as soon as I woke up to re-strategize. I wasn't going to let the game beat me this easily. Our new strategy was simple, and it was elegant. We'd get to level 69 and put all of our new skill points into Warmth for Blaze Synergy. We would respec out of Energy Shield completely and put those points back into our Cold Armor for increased damage. Then we'd take all of our stat points and we put them into Vitality instead of Energy. If this didn't work, we'd still have 1 respec in Hell to try something else, but I had no intention of relying on that. So it was back to Nightmare Worldstone Keep for levels, and then straight back to Hell Ancients. And our plan worked. Talik died, Madoc followed, we had been managing our potions really well, and that left only Corlic alone. Corlic didn't much like being left alone, and he made us suffer for it. He refused to proc our Blaze skill, and he carried a lot of damage due to Spectral Hit, which is going to add a ton of different elemental damage types, especially poison. And every time that we got poison, it would quickly drain our potions to stay alive. And I was running out fast. In fact, by the end, I only had 1 rejuve potion left, and I needed to proc Blaze at least 3 more times to kill him. And that's when I had to rely on the most overlooked stat in PVM Diablo 2, Replenish Life. Bulwark, our helmet, has 30 Replenish Life on it, and given enough time, we would fully heal. This fight took us over an hour to complete, but we got there, and it was finally on to Hellbale. While there was some minor throne drama and 1 reset, it really wasn't that bad. We tried wave skipping and skipped the most important wave, wave 2, and then we had to drag everything else out. Then the fight with Bale was oddly therapeutic. It was merely a matter of time. He doesn't do a lot of damage. Sometimes you need to despawn his clone, and sometimes his tentacles actually help to trigger the blaze, and then he makes the mistake of chasing you through the fire. But eventually, he would be dead. All I had to do was not mess anything up. By this point, we were reinvigorated. Chat could smell victory just a few moments away, and we did it. I'll let Twitch Matt give his final words, but I just want to say thanks for watching this video. I never thought that we'd be able to accomplish this back when I started speedrunning the Pacifist all the way in LOD, and now we're here. Can I be real with you all? Because this was long enough that I think being emotional is like warranted. There was legitimately a point in the Chaos Sanctuary where I had the thought, I have to give up on this run and I'm never gonna do it ever again. And no one's gonna get as lucky as we did with drops. And it's just not gonna happen. That sucked. That was like a heavy thing to think. And then 4 hours into Infector of Souls glitches was another point where I had to have the thought, do I need to like give up on this run and it will literally never get done ever again? And then we got to the Ancients and I realized I had no idea how I killed the Ancients before, and I just winged it. And I walked in and we just couldn't kill the Ancients, and I had to have the thought, you just can't do it. But realistically, like, this character just can't do it. Yep, there's my mom. But 33 hours and 27 minutes is, I think, the only time anyone is ever going to say, I just completed a Hell Pacifist Sorceress run, and now I need to figure out how to upload this to speedrun.com.